is an open letter for Mr. Donald Trump, the 45th and 47th President of the United States. Hello, sir. Bravo, you won the election. Bravo, sir. I should say before I start that I'm not a foreign agent. I am foreign because when I asked Uncle Sam's managers when I asked them to be American, they said no, fuck you, you can't be American. So I have remained a foreign, an alien on your land. So that's about it. I'm an alien on your land, but I'm not an agent. To be an agent, you have to work for somebody, you have to get paid for your services. You know, there's some qualifications that has to be there for one to be considered as an agent. I am agent of no one, so thank God for self-employment. I don't work for anybody in any way. So and I hope that Wells Fargo will reconsider closing my account, because apparently I have fallen below the category that is considered human enough to have a bank account. Apparently I have fallen to the category of the goats who don't need a bank account. Anyway, that aside, I'm a goat alien on your planet that, I don't have same rights as other humans on your, other humans living in the area of your jurisdiction. So, they have threatened to close my bank account. Okay. They said they're going to close it. But frankly, I don't see any reason for it. I did want to be American. They said no. So I've remained an alien, but again, not an agent. So what I say is my own perception, my own conclusions. They may be right, they may be wrong. I take, no responsibility for them. But I do think it would be a good idea to bring it up in conversation with people more intelligent than I, and see if you can dig any holes in the idea. If you can't find any holes in the idea, maybe the idea is not so bad. Anyway, that's my point. So here's the thing. With this I thought I'd make this letter with regards to just international issues, international frontiers. My last open letter was about the domestic frontier and how to fix that. This is about the international frontier, and this is my view of how to fix it. Here's first Russia. Sir, Russia has been, since Russia has been Russia, it has been attacked multiple times from the West. You know about World War II and World War I. Everybody knows World War II and World War I. But, nobody knows about, not many people know about the Napoleonic Wars and the Germanic Wars and the this wars and that wars. Russia has always been under attack. And for the simple reason that Western Europe has got very populated with, proportional to the land. And they have always looked to East for resources. The fucking British were able to get their resources from the colonies that they found in Africa and North America and South America. But the mainland Europeans, there was no more new resources in the West. They had to look east, and multiple times the Russians have got screwed from the West. The guys who have a territory there, and who have a specific language there, who have a specific branch of Christianity there, all of that, those guys have been fucked by these Western Europeans, or people living in Europe proper many times. In other words, you can say the Asians, Eurasians of Russia have took it up the ass from the Europeans many times. It wasn't the Russians who invaded Germany. It was Germany who invaded Russia. The wall went up because, sort of like Russia said, okay, I'm going to keep this shit hole, because apparently if you leave this shithole alone, it seeking resources, it always ends up at my doorstep. They don't want to trade for the resources that they want. They want to go to war over it. That's Ukraine. That's BlackRock on behalf of the British, on behalf of the European Union, going to war in Ukraine for access to free resources so they don't have to pay for it. Imagine that, sir. People of one land forcing their way onto another land because they want those resources free. If they wanted to pay for the resources, there wouldn't be any war. If BlackRock wanted to pay for Ukrainian land, there wouldn't be any war. They don't want to pay for it, proper prices. Not destroyed prices. They knock out the walls on the house and then they want to buy it for 10 cents on the dollar. Anyway, here's the thing, sir. Russia is very paranoid, and understandably very paranoid towards the West. Here's the thing, Mr. Trump. What happens when you have a paranoid neighbor? What do you have to do to alleviate the problems or prevent the problems that may come up when you know you have a paranoid neighbor? To prevent any problems from coming up, you always, in every one of your parties, your paranoid neighbor is the first one you're going to write on the guest list. Why? Because you want this motherfucker who's very paranoid in your every party, and you spend the most time with them just because you know this is the paranoid motherfucker. This is the one I have to worry about. The rest of them are normal. Do you see where I'm going with this? But then knowing that the guy is paranoid because there are multiple reasons for it, multiple wars from the West to the East. The Iron Curtain didn't come down because the Russians wanted the populated Central Europe. But what is the use of more population when all the resources are on the East? The East can live richly. It's the Western Europe who keeps wanting to push into land into Asia for resources, free resources, hopefully. So your neighbor has many reasons to be paranoid. Many people who lived in your house were bad before you, were bad towards that neighbor, so he has he worries about you and anybody who lives in this house, because many other people who occupied this house before you were mean to him, bad to him. So what do? You invite him, you're very nice to him, you're not mean, you're very nice, because this is the paranoid motherfucker who got fucked up the ass many times from the West. They have historical memory. They have songs from World War II, from World War I. They have poems from going back to Napoleonic War. So you have such a neighbor in Europe, and then you don't invite him into NATO? They got screwed by the members of NATO multiple times. The French attacked Russia, the Germans attacked Russia, the Poles attacked Russia. All of these guys attacked Russia to get access to resources. So you don't want them to be paranoid? So of course they're paranoid. So what do? You erect NATO, and when the most paranoid guy on the block says, I want to join NATO, you say, no, this is for us. This is for Anglo-Saxon, Franco-Germans. This is not for Ruskies. Oh. You tell the most, you don't invite the most paranoid neighbor that you have to your party, what do you think is going to happen? And then you keep, you start, you know, going right up to him and befriending his neighbors more and more. Of course he's going to start shooting. You want to bring Ukraine into the party, but when the Russians applied to be in the party, you said no. What did you expect? Here is the Russians being paranoid, being actively paranoid because they haven't been invited to the party. Why? Because apparently it goes back to George W. Bush again. Didn't invite the Russians into NATO, didn't want to deal with them. Apparently goes back to the shit show that he started in Ukraine, in Iraq. You just, the masses elected president is a bad idea because of once in a while Bush comes in, makes such a mess that it takes the next 50 president to try to clean up his mess. Anyway, that's Russia, sir. The solution to Russia is to be extremely friendly to Russia, extra friendly to Russia, because the Russians have had it bad from the West. If they want to join NATO, sure. What is the need for NATO if not to stand up to Russia or push Russia down? It's not so much standing up to Russia, now they want to push Russia down. So that was the whole purpose. It has remained the purpose, and the Russians rightfully feel very paranoid. Who can blame them? These, Western hordes are coming for Russian resources again, trying to come for Russian resources again. Are you kidding me? Nobody gets this. Those smart people in the the National Security Service and the National Intelligence Service don't get this. That why are you picking a fight with the most paranoid neighbor that you have? Is the purpose to go to war? Is the purpose the resources that are in Russia? Go to space. You find the same resources in space. Whatever you need is in space. Plenty. You don't need Russian resources. Stop fighting the Russians. Stop picking a fight with your most paranoid neighbor. This is the fastest way to go to nuclear war. Salute. China. Here's the thing, sir. China, we don't know, when we go back to history, nobody has heard of Chinese invading India or invading Africa or invading even Malaysia and Indonesia. We don't hear of that. There is not much of it around. When left alone, they pretty much mind their own business, the Chinese. That's by nature. Even integration, they don't like to integrate. You see, you have Chinatown because they like to mind their own business and they don't, care for, dealing with people that, may not be as tuned as they are. Let's just put it there. As tuned as they are. You have professional thinkers and then you have amateur thinkers, and professional thinkers really are not attuned with amateur thinkers or not thinkers. Let's put it that way. So they haven't been on a conquest spree, not even in South Asia, East Asia. Not much, as long as their security was, they even put a wall, the Chinese wall. The idea is that they don't want to expand. When you put a wall up, between US and Mexico, that means at least you don't want to expand into Mexico. You're happy with what you got, you put a wall up. You don't want to expand. The Chinese didn't even want to expand. When they had the power, they didn't even want to expand into Mongolia. They put a wall up and say, motherfuckers, stay on that side, this is good enough for us. They're not an expansionist race. You know, because first they have the resources, second they have the brain power, so they make great thing with the resources that they have. They really are not, Europeans. They're not expansionists. This is the thing that even Mr. Mearsheimer skips over. I think he forgets, I guess. It's a blind spot for Mr. Mearsheimer that the mindset of the Chinese is not the European mindset of, paranoid. It's not even, the Russian mindset. It's not paranoid. The Chinese are not paranoid. And they left alone, they formed Chinatown, and left alone, they built China very well, and they're not planning on taking over anybody, especially in a bloody war manner. No, they're not planning that. They're still, playing hide and seek with their own island, Taiwan. It's sort of like, I mean, if Cuba was about to go up all in smoke, because Uncle Sam's managers thought that, this, and Cuba is still suffering because Uncle Sam's managers are thinking that these motherfuckers should be under our control, the Cubans, the Cuban system, government. Have you seen Chinese do that to Taiwan? No, they actually trade with Taiwan and is one of their biggest trading partner, even now apparently. So, and they have tourists coming back and forth. This is nothing like the relationship that Uncle Sam's managers have with Cuba. The relationship, and China and Taiwan the relationship is much more, if they expected Taiwan to be fully under their control, it would have been understandable, as opposed to Uncle Sam's managers thinking that Cuba should be under their full control is not understandable, because the relationship with that over there is much closer than the relationship you guys have with Cuba. You don't even speak the same language, national language. So how is it? You see what I'm saying? This European mindset that they must be under our control or else we're going to take it up the ass. This is an European mindset. The Chinese mindset, they don't need to be in control of everybody else because they're worried they're going to take it up the ass. They don't worry about that because that's not their mindset. They will not take it up the ass, and they don't worry about it. The Europeans are a little paranoid. I mean, the Russians are, on the paranoid scale of 0 to 10, the Russians are paranoid 10, 11. The Europeans, the rest of Europeans are paranoid 7, 8, 6, 7, 8. The Chinese are not at all paranoid. They're paranoid in this scale. The Chinese paranoia is 3, 4, 2, 3. Because as long as you don't push up to them, they will do their own thing, just like they do in Chinatowns all over the world. Now, if you go attack the Chinatown, they're going to bring hell to you, but their mindset is not paranoid, is not very much we have to conquer kind of mindset. We have to conquer them so we don't be conquered. This seems to me, the white European mindset that says we have to go conquer, if not, we will be conquered. Not every race on your planet has this mindset, Mr. Trump. They don't. Again, you don't see the Chinese conquering a lot of these Southeast Asian islands. They trade with them, they go settle in them, but either they integrate with the population or they have Chinatowns. They don't want to rule anybody. They don't want to control them. you know, is conquer or be conquered, I'm trying to say, is a bit of an European white pink skin kind of a mindset. Conquer or be conquered. No, neither really. You don't have to do either. You can mind your own business and they mind their own business. That's China, sir. You can live well with the Chinese. I had a Chinese partner I worked with for a short while. Very logical, very calm, very thinking. You really don't have to, go out of your way. You don't have to go out of your way to deal with the Chinese, but with the Russians you do. You have to be extra friendly to the Russians. Because they're paranoid, because they have reason to be paranoid. There was this thing going around some time ago that in Russia, people don't smile at each other in the street. It's not common to see while you're walking in the street, it's not common to see Russians smile at each other. And if they do smile, then that's apparently that's a red flag. Walking into the buildings, coming out, going in, if they do smile, Russians take it as a red flag. Why do you think that is? That sounds right about paranoid people, right? Why are you smiling at me? That's a paranoid perspective, and the Russians have it in abundance. So what do? So you encroach NATO up their ass, and you say no, they want to. We don't want you as part of NATO, but we are okay having your girlfriend Ukraine as part of NATO. Imagine, Russia sees Ukraine and Belarus and this area as, they are friends and neighbors, and you're inviting its neighbors into your club, into your country club, but you don't invite Russia. You're asking for trouble. That's the point, apparently. The trouble is because you guys want Russian resources for free, and the Russians don't want to give it up for free. That's all. That's as simple as it comes. Folks, you want free stuff, go to space. You want free resources, go to space. But going up Russia's ass for resources, that's the most bloody way of obtaining resources. Thank you very much. Don't. Salute. Israel. I thought I covered all foreign, all international issues. Israel, sir. Here's the thing, Mr. Trump. Imagine that somebody, you tell Eric, your son, imagine that he should go and take over a piece of Little Haiti. I understand Miami area has a Little Haiti. That's where, it's like Chinatown, but for Haitians, and cheap houses. They're all living together in cheap houses in that area. And apparently it hasn't been in high demand because it's in higher area, higher level, higher from the sea. So, but now that the sea is rising, apparently Little Haiti is in high demand. Little Haiti land is in high demand. Imagine you tell Eric that he should go and not buy the houses in Little Haiti, but kick out people who are living there, buy 3 houses and kick 30 people out of their homes, destroy their homes, and build. This is your advice. Imagine your advice to Eric to destroy those houses and build a gated community for whites only in the middle of Little Haiti in Miami. You advise, or your brother advises your son to go. When I say your brother, I mean the British who advised the Ashkenazi to go and build a gated community in Arabian Peninsula. Here's the thing, sir. Your brother has advised your son. The Americans and the British are somehow, so up to this point, have been kind of joined at the hip. They're like brothers. Up to this point. And that's where the trouble starts. I will go over the British later. But the Israelis are like Eric. Your brother has told Eric to go in the middle of Little Haiti, buy 5 homes and destroy 50, take over the chunk of land, and start a gated community for only white folks. How much trouble do you think Eric has to endure, and for how long? If he has bought 5 houses but destroyed and taken over 50 houses for free, has built his gated community, and he doesn't even want to let the native Haitians or black people of that neighborhood, he doesn't even want to let any of them to own any of the houses inside this gated community. They can only come and work in this gated community and leave at night. This is for whites only. Your son Eric is going to have 5 lifetimes of hell trying to keep that gated community just going normally. Because all around Little Haiti, all these black Haitians are going to go nuts. You took our friends and families' land, you destroyed their homes, build your own gated community on top of it, and you won't even let us in. And if you let us in, you invite us in to work and then leave. Well, sir, this is exactly what has happened in Israel. First of all, that area of the world, sir, in specific, it's called Arabian Peninsula. A peninsula is a piece of land surrounded by water from 3 sides. That's a peninsula. It's like an island, but not really an island, so they call it a peninsula. It has a small attachment to the mainland from one side, surrounded by water by 3 sides. It's called an Arabian Peninsula. It has a certain character for itself. It has an Arabian Peninsula has an Arab character for itself. It has a specific language, more or less the same religion. They follow different branches of it, but more or less it's the same religion. They look more or less the same. Their skin complexion is more or less the same, and it's brown, different shades of brown. And that's the majority. Yes, there are some white anomalies there, but majority are by different shades of brown. It's Arabian Peninsula. It gets a lot of sunshine. It has been getting it for the past 3 billion years on Earth. So that means the native population has had to develop a kind of protection against this kind of sun that Arabian Peninsula produces. As a result, they have turned a little brown so they don't die of carcinoma. My point is this. In this Arabian Peninsula, with a specific Arab character, and this Arab character has remained very specific because it's a peninsula. You see what I'm saying? Places where there are so many, people of different cultures and religions pass a lot, has its own character, but a place that is, it's surrounded by water from 3 sides, and traveling through it is very difficult, and it's the weather is very inhospitable. It becomes a very unique character. Okay, sort of like Little Haiti in Miami. It has its own unique character. What the British have convinced the Ashkenazi is that yes, you can go set up a gated community right in an important place in this Arabian Peninsula. It's not an Ashkenazi peninsula. It's not an European peninsula. It's not white people's peninsula. It's not Western Europe's peninsula. It's not North America's. It's called Arabian Peninsula. Telling the British, telling the Ashkenazi Europeans, who make up 90% of the Jewish community of the world, are Ashkenazi European. A specific ethnicity in Europe makes up 90% of the Jewish people of the world. 90%. So you can either say Jewish or you can say Ashkenazi. You probably mean the same thing, because when 90% of the population is Arab Ashkenazi origin, you can imply that all are Ashkenazi. So my point is this: the British have convinced these guys that it's a great idea to put up a gated community of Ashkenazis in a very important place geographically on Arabian Peninsula. It's not Ashkenazi Peninsula. It's not white people's peninsula. It's not European peninsula. It's Arab Peninsula. That means more or less everybody in Arabian Peninsula, everywhere in Arabian Peninsula, more or less the Arabs should be in majority. It's called Arabian Peninsula, and this is where Arabs live, and this is where Arabs are majority. That's the whole point of it. The Arabs are majority there. There are non-Arabs there, but the Arabs are majority, so they call it Arabian Peninsula. Ashkenazis cannot have a gated community in the Arabian Peninsula. Not that because I say so. I'm an asshole. Because logic says you cannot have a for whites only gated community in the middle, build one in the middle of stolen land in Little Haiti, and expect the natives to say, cool, no problem. You can't do that. That's the problem with Israel. The problem is, it's just a nonsensical idea. It's an idea that is asking for trouble. It's an answer for a question no one asked. The question is, what happens if you take a bunch of white Europeans and you go to Arabian Peninsula and declare your own country? They take the land and declare that land your own. This is now part of Europe. And I say part of Europe is because they still think of them. So they still all have their second European passports. They still think of themselves as Europeans. And as evidence, all the Israeli football teams, soccer teams, play in European league because the Asians wouldn't play with them. Why? You think, back to the Little Haiti example, you really think that then the people around that gated community that Eric has built for whites only at the center of Little Haiti, you think their children can play together in sports and shit? Their children are also pissed off. It's not that the Jewish people have built a community there. It's not, the problem is not that. The problem is not that Ashkenazi folks have built a community there. It's that they have restricted, have made it, have said that this is for whites only. This is for Jews only, or better said, this is for whites only. This is for Ashkenazi only. If Ashkenazi are all white, so that makes it for whites only community. I repeat, if Ashkenazis are all white, and the Christians are European Christians are all white, the Christians can also say, okay, I converted to Judaism or whatever. If you give me free food and free healthcare and free this and free that in Israel, okay, I convert to Judaism, I go to Israel and I use all the free stuff that you will give me. You see what I'm saying? It's so, white people all of them can pass as Jewish. All white people can pass. The guy in Argentina, he just converted to Judaism. He's white, he's European, he has blue eyes. Great guy, but he just became Jewish. So, and And he can say, yeah, my grandparents were also all Europeans' grandparents were Jewish. It was the original religion, and then it went and Christianity came. So everybody is Jewish originally, just like everybody is African originally. So all Europeans basically can convert, all North American white people can convert and move to Israel for free stuff in this gated community. But my point was that it's for whites only. They still do have a lot of problem even with that fucking 12 people they brought from Ethiopia. They have many, racist protests against them. Even though there are 12 of them, and the 12 that they brought over from the Sephardic Jews, all 12 of them that they brought over, they have problem with them as well. Because it's for whites only. It's not the religious gated community. It's mostly an ethnic gated community, and it's basically European gated community on Arab land. Sir, it's an answer for a question who nobody asked. You know what's the solution, sir? The solution is you can say, I want a free Israel. What does a free Israel look like? New York City. Mr. Trump, you're familiar with New York City? The Arabs and the Jews and the Muslims and the Ashkenazi and the Anglo and the Saxon and everybody works well in New York City together, correct? And it has worked well as long as it's policed well. Everything works fine. Why don't you come up with the idea of, I want a free Israel? That means one man, one vote. Everybody can live anywhere they want if they can afford it. Go crazy and build the land, but you can't discriminate. Here's the thing, sir. Two things has become clear in North America, that integration is good. Integration of racism, it's good. The result has been peaceful, thank God, so far. The result has been peaceful, and then everybody have been able to rise to their full potential. You see, when they had the black baseball league and the white baseball league, the white people couldn't raise up to their potential, and the black people couldn't raise up to their full potential. And the best one coming out and the best one making the biggest money. You see where I'm going with it? It's only when they came together and it became clear, and they helped each other, raised each other in terms of skills. My point is this, and it's the most peaceful way of existing if you can integrate in. European call it assimilation. Assimilation means, you should call me Joe. That's assimilation. It's not authentic. Assimilation is not authentic. You want integration. If assimilation takes place, you will lose the variety. If full assimilation takes place, you will lose the variety. What makes life interesting on your planet is the variety. With less variety comes less mental stimulation. With less mental stimulation is not that different from death. So integration has worked in North America. Secular system has worked in North America. Why don't you give this advice to Israel? This is the logical advice. And you know why? Because for whites, gated community in the middle of little Haiti is going to be very troublesome. But if the gates are open and anybody, first of all, if the land is not forcefully taken, people are paid for their land, then when it's built, it's open to everybody. If you can afford it, you can come and live in it. It's not for whites only, it's not for Jews only, it's not for Ashkenazis only. If you can afford it, you can come and live in it. And if you have any claim to the land, you go to a secular court And in the secular court, all the claims to the land are, you know, reviewed and established. My point is this: you can say, I want a free Israel. That's a very good message. Everybody likes free, right? Freedom, freedom, freedom. Why not free Israel? Free Palestine, free Israel. It doesn't matter by which name you call it, as long as it's a secular system that welcomes everybody. Make it New York City in West Asia. In that way, the locals are not upset either. Mr. Trump, Abraham Accords, whoever's brain came up with the Abraham Accords, it's a maybe a propaganda genius, but it's not a real genius, because Abraham Accord was basically you're putting a gun to the Arabs' head, you're sitting them down, and you're telling them, you sign this peace deal or else. How do you think that's a long-term solution? The next president, 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road, if how you got what you wanted was by at the point of a gun, how long do you think you can keep it if you got what you got? In other words, if you go to a robbery and you point a gun at somebody and you steal their thing, exactly how long you think you're going to be in the possession of it? As long as you can run away from the law. And it's not a healthy way of living, being on the run from the law. This is the idea that you're pushing in with the Abraham Accord. It was pushed. Probably wasn't your idea, somebody else's idea. The idea was pushed that if you put a gun to these Arabs' head and have them sit down and sign a peace accord, problem is solved. Are you kidding me? And they didn't even send their chiefs, they sent their doormans to sign the papers with you. And they all came, and like little puppets, they came and sat down and signed. How much do you think their signature is worth? Nothing. Their population is pissed, because their population reads and writes, and they know it's called Arabian Peninsula. And their population reads and writes, and they understand that the biggest dick on Arabian Peninsula doesn't belong to the Arabs, but belongs to a group of Europeans who have a gated community of Europeans on Arabian Peninsula. You see, Europeans, Arabs, Indians, Chinese, these are all identities. You brought over a bunch of European on Arabian Peninsula, and you kicked the population out. You killed some of them. You kicked the rest of them out into the neighboring countries. And you think this enterprise has to, at some point, will achieve peace? No, as long as you continue holding a gun to the Arabs' head and continue supplying arms to Israel in order to be the top dog, it will continue. When you can't support Israel to be the top dog, the enterprise will stop, Israel will become secular, the population will integrate, and it will be free Israel for everybody, free Palestine for everybody. It's a piece of land. If you can afford it, you can come and live in it. Legally, lawfully, with police protection, with police. But the point is this, sir. You're sitting, Israelis, you're forcing a bunch of Arabs to be subservient, to be weaker on Arabian Peninsula to a group of Europeans who call themselves Ashkenazi. That's the whole point, right? The idea that Israel has to be the strongest country in the Middle East so it can defend itself, and it's acceptable for Israel to be the only nuclear power in Middle East. That's acceptable because it has to defend itself, because it's got all these enemies. Yeah, it's got all these enemies because it's in the wrong place. It's an European colony in the middle of a place on your planet that you guys call Arabian Peninsula. It's like going in the middle of Mecca or stating that from now on, this city in the middle of Saudi Arabia, this is a European land. This also belonged to the Anglo-Saxons. Jerusalem belongs to the Ashkenazi, and Mecca belongs to the Anglo-Saxons. It would be an uproar. It would be a continuous war for as long as you claim that. It's a nonsensical answer to a question who no one will ask. And the solution is very simple. Because here's the thing, sir. A gated community for whites only is very expensive to upkeep as opposed to an open community. You don't pay any HOA charge when you live in an open community. But the more this community has to be enclosed and protected, the HOA fee keeps going up. You live in a gated community in Arizona, it's this price. You live in a gated community in Florida, it's this price. You go live in a gated community in an uprise in New York, in a skyscraper in New York, the HOA fee is going to be this much because of all the protection is needed. Now imagine how much the HOA fee is going to be if you have to have an iron dome and a brass dome and a nickel dome. You have to have cruise missiles and heavy missiles and this missiles and that missiles. You have to have the best police force and the security force and intelligence force in the Middle East. That's fucking expensive. And that's where all the money that you're printing and sending to Israel is going, to make Israel the best in the Middle East. The problem is, it's not Arab. You're supporting a for whites only colony of Europeans and North Americans on a place that's called Arabian Peninsula. You think Arabs haven't noticed this? And you're supporting them that said they have the right to defend themselves. The Arabs are like, defend themselves. They took over our land and they're killing us. That's more like an offense. It's not a defense. It's plain and simple, sir. It's just that I just, I'm sure if an asshole like me understands this, people with great intelligence cannot deny that they understand it. Almost, anybody with any kind of intelligence understand the situation. You cannot. The upkeep of a gated community that needs cruise missiles to exist is very expensive, as opposed to a gated community that doesn't need cruise missiles to exist, doesn't need an iron dome to exist. You are supporting, you're financing a very exclusive gated community in a neighborhood of people of a different race, very different race, who feel they have been wrong and their lands have been forcefully taken, which it has. Eric if he has such an idea, is going to be fighting 5 lifetimes with the people of Little Haiti if he does such a thing in Little Haiti in Miami. It's not that difficult to understand. You're going to be fighting the natives day in and day out for 5 lifetimes until you stop wanting to be exclusive. That's the point, sir. Free Israel. You don't want to call it Palestine? Fine. Free Israel. From tomorrow morning, Israel is a secular free state. If this is we are going to stop supporting Israel militarily. Israel doesn't need to have a big military. It's a small country, and if it's open to everybody, why does it not have military? Costa Rica doesn't have a military because it's a small country, and it's a great idea. It's a small country, and it's open to almost everybody, so they don't need a military. They don't, care for a military. Israel should be the same thing. It's New York City. New York State doesn't need a military. Yes, National Reserve and this and yeah, but doesn't really need a military. There is a U.S. military force, but New York City doesn't need a military force. Just like Israel, a small country over there, as long as the doors are open, and it's something like a Dubai, seriously, I mean, you have to learn from the Arabs themselves. Make it Dubai out of Israel. The thing with Dubai is everybody's welcome. You can afford it. You're welcome in it. You can't be a citizen, but you can live. That's a great idea. In Israel, you just add the citizenship too. Yes, you spend 10 years here, you can become citizen. If you can afford it, if you spend 10 years in it, we don't care if you're Chinese or Japanese, you can come and live in Israel. Open. Free Israel. You don't like free Palestine? Free Israel, sir. A secular Israel with no ethnic territorial claim. 4. Regarding the British, sir. Sorry, Mr. Trump is taking a bit longer than I thought. No, hopefully somebody else watches it and tells you the summary. Here's the thing, sir. If you want to know, of course. Here's the thing, sir. The British, you seem to be joined at the hip. The reason the British like to be joined at the hip with you is obvious. Because Uncle Sam has got the big dick as opposed to the British. So the British don't mind, giving Uncle Sam a hand job here and there as long as they can stay in bed with Uncle Sam. And the British don't mind giving a blowjob to Uncle Sam here and there as long as they get to stay in bed with Uncle Sam. Now the problem with staying in bed with the British is it's great for the British. The British, it's a fucking island, cold island in the middle of Atlantic. They have nothing. Absolutely none. They have exhausted all their resources centuries ago. That's why they've been stealing other people's resources for a couple of centuries now. They have exhausted all their resources. So the British just have a name. Great Britain. And they keep calling themselves great. Okay. They only have a name. When they're in bed with you, with Uncle Sam, what happens is, because they don't have anything themselves, they want to go and resource things, and usually they want to get them for free or very cheap. And that can only happen by force. You only can get things free or very cheap if some kind of force is involved. So the British, who are always hungry for resources because they have none themselves, they have exhausted their own, the British, who are always after resources and wealth, being in Uncle Sam's bed, convince Uncle Sam often to go out, try to grab resources for free. Uncle Sam doesn't need any resources. Uncle Sam's land has got all these resources it wants. It doesn't need to go try to grab resources for free or very cheap by taking control of different pieces of land, like in Iraq, like in Syria, like in Afghanistan. Uncle Sam doesn't need that. You know who does need that? It's the British. But they don't have a big deck anymore. So they spend their time in bed with Uncle Sam in hopes that they can convince Uncle Sam to go on these expeditions for resources. The resources that Uncle Sam already has, the British don't have. So what I'm trying to say is that the British are trouble. More trouble than they're worth. Yes, you speak their language, you have some of their tradition, you carry on some of their tradition, but the British are more trouble than it's worth. Following the British, being in bed with British is more expensive than it's worth. It's like a old hag that's still in your bed. Drags you to all kinds of fights and hooliganism, and the pussy is not good either. So it's best to Uncle Sam to stand on its own feet and not be in bed with the British. This is the whole story of British. On top of all this, Mr. Trump, you should realize that the British have a population problem. That means one of their major objectives is to kill or drive out their own population, often because they don't, most of the land is privately owned, and it's a limited island which most of its land is privately owned. So the peasants needs to be pushed out, either through killed in a war or just sent out on expedition and colonialism, because the few who own their land in England don't want to share it with peasants. So they have to get rid of the peasant. So it's one of the few countries that actually one of their objectives is to thin out their own herd, kill their own people. Just because that's, how England works out. Because they see what happened to the Eastern Island and how people of an island can overgrow the island and eventually into their own demise. From that, they have learned that they have to get rid of their peasants often, sacrifice their peasants often, because there are too many people in the island. But that's the path that the British choose. That's not for others who live on big pieces of land, and there is more than enough land for everybody. British are bad influence, I guess what I'm trying to say. And what I'm thinking is that, for example, this bad influence has taken over, for example, NPR, National Public Radio in North America, during the period of its internet, when it announces international news, it rebroadcasts the British Broadcasting Corporation's news, international news. BBC produces international news and tells its citizens about their perspective in world affair, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, and NPR rebroadcasts that. Are the British the 51st state? How is it that a foreign country's international news, or news from their perspective, or international news from their perspective, a foreign nation's news based on their perspective, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, is rebroadcast in North America? Do the British still own North America? Have the British, become 51st state? Why is the British influence so great in North America? Because the British, the reason it's important, answering this question, is because the British interest is very different from Canadian interest. The British interest is very different from American interest. The British interest is very different from the Mexican interest. Again, the British, because it's a resource-free island, resource-free cold island, it has different priorities than almost anybody else on this planet, any other country on this planet. The British have a very different priorities. Maybe the British and Japanese have to understand each other and each other's priorities, but that's it. Only the British and the Japanese. They are in the category of their own. They should be left alone from international arena. The British and Japanese should be left from the international arena, because they have a very specific priorities that nobody else has. Most importantly, resources and land. They're very, they're resource free. They've used all the resources. So their priorities is not the same as yours. Why are you picking your friends and enemies based on British news, based on British priorities, Why is North America choosing its friends and enemies based on the priorities that the British set, which is always resource oriented? The British want part of the Russian resources. Americans have got their own resources more than plenty. Ukraine war is also, if you pull the string, follow the string, you will end up realizing it was a British idea. This whole NATO, continuation of NATO and adding the new countries to NATO, and this Ukraine project. At the end of the day, you're going to find the real enthusiast behind it. It's not even your deep state. It's not your bureaucrats. It's not your neocons. The real string comes out of London because they're short on resources. From London it goes to New York, and from New York it goes to Washington, and from Washington it goes to Pentagon, and in the Pentagon it's executed. London, New York, Washington, Pentagon, execution. London, New York, Washington, Pentagon, execution. Bad idea to copy the British homework. Bad idea. I know, Mr. Trump, you're impressed with the British and their royalty and this and that. You're very impressed, I understand. But not that they're evil. Some may argue for that, but they are practical. And they're because of being practical and priorities, living in a well-defined island are different from your priorities. You shouldn't be in the same bed with the British. Without the British interference, America doesn't need to have a problem with Russia. But remember, the British and some Europeans are out of resources, natural resources. They are the ones instigating to drive Russians out of some land in the east in order to get their hand on resources. America doesn't need that. The world doesn't need that. The Europeans have to just deal with it and buy resources in open market. Nobody gets resources for free. If they want resources, if Europeans want resources, go to space. The next time you see the British Prime Minister, tell him, hey dude, you want resources? It's not in Ukraine, it's in space. Go to space. Thank you for your time. I hope this helps whoever it could help. So we would have to, so less human beings die. Open Israel, sir. Open Israel is just free Israel. Secular, free Israel. All your problems in the Middle East goes away in one day. Taiwan is Chinese. Chinese are not territorial. They're not conquerors. They will not. Don't think they will conquer America. Russians, paranoid. Be best friends with them. You have a great time, and no trouble. Period. And the British, stay away, way away. Thank you for your time, Mr. Trump. Salute.